Ciao a tutti, ben ritrovati con Outcast Reportage, il podcast di Outcast.it nel quale vi raccontiamo fiere ed eventi legati al mondo dei videogiochi. Quella che state per ascoltare è la seconda parte dell'episodio sulle 3 2019 ed è sostanzialmente costituita dalle 4 interviste che ho condotto a Los Angeles per conto di IGN Italia. Potrete quindi ascoltare le voci di due membri del team di sviluppo di Crystal Dynamics impegnato su Marvel's Avengers, vale a dire Rose Hunt, lead producer, e Philippe Therien, lead designer. Poi c'è Leonard Boyarsky, nome storico della scena dei giochi di ruolo per computer, diciamo giochi di ruolo occidentali, ha lavorato sui primi Fallout, sui vari giochi di Troika Games, quindi per esempio anche Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines, e attualmente lavora in Obsidian dopo i suoi 10 anni su Diablo 3 per Blizzard ed si sta occupando di The Outer Worlds. Poi di Remedy ho incontrato Brooke, narrative designer, e Mikale Kasurinen, che sono al lavoro su Control, e infine Jason Rubin, cofondatore di Naughty Dogs, quindi insomma creatore di Crash Bandicoot e Jack and Dexter, è stato anche amministratore delegato di THQ, attualmente ormai da qualche anno è impegnato, diciamo, a capo della sezione videogiochi per Oculus e Facebook, e quindi con lui si parla di realtà virtuale ma anche di Crash Bandicoot. Tutte le interviste sono chiaramente in inglese. Se preferite leggervele in traduzione italiana, vi segnalo che l'intervista a Jason Rubin è già stata pubblicata come trascrizione completa su IGN Italia. Le altre 3 interviste sono state pubblicate sotto forma di virgolettati integrati con le mie anteprime dei rispettivi giochi su IGN Italia, e nei prossimi giorni su Outcast.it arriveranno le trascrizioni complete in italiano proprio di quelle 3 interviste. Quella di Jason Rubin, essendo già completa su IGN Italia, non avrebbe senso ripubblicarla. Direi che è tutto. Vi ricordo velocissimamente che potete contattarci con podcast@outcast.it, che ci trovate sui social network come Outcast Live, e che se volete supportarci con donazioni o anche solo facendo acquisti tramite i nostri link convenzionati, trovate tutti i link del caso su outcast.it. Direi di nuovo è tutto, vi lascio al podcast. Well, first of all, can you introduce yourselves?
My name is Rose Hunt, and I'm the lead producer of Marvel's Avengers.
I'm Philippe Therien, and I'm the lead designer for the Avengers.
Okay. Well, I guess my first question is, you're working with such a strong license, and you're doing your own thing, but at the same time there's the movies, and everybody have the image of the movies. And it's bizarre because you see the trailer, and okay, this is not the movie, they are their own character, but at the same time it's the same, almost the same information, and there's the 5 years later, which is kinda like in Endgame.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, and I mean, there's a couple of different things here, but right from the beginning, we wanted to tell an original story, and we've been collaborating with Marvel on this for many years now. And
how many years?
We haven't been specific about that, but it's been a while. And the key thing is, your impression was right. Some things feel familiar because that Marvel DNA is present there, but it's an original story, and it's never been a tough choice for us to decide to do this. We wanted to tell original stories with our own characters, and that's why we have such a cool cast of characters. I mean, and we have amazing actors voicing the heroes. Nolan North, Troy Baker, Travis Willingham, Laura Bailey. We've got such a cool cast, right?
Yeah.
So it's really exciting.
Yeah, and it was important for us to start with these core Avengers, but over the next couple of years, we're going to be rolling out an ever-expanding roster of characters that goes, far beyond these core 5.
But that's going to be for the multiplayer? Or?
It's going to be for the game. So if there's content that you want to play with some of the new superheroes that get released, then you can definitely do that. So you can go backwards and play some of the game with new heroes later.
Okay, because from the demo here, it looks kind of very straightforward. Okay, this is the section where you use the Iron Man,
right.
This is where you use which makes sense because you can tailor
Yeah.
it. But so you're saying that I can play those sessions with different characters?
So it depends. That level specifically has stories about the heroes that are present there. So in that case, you're going to play those heroes very specifically, and some levels are like that. But there's also a good amount of the game where you can pick any Avenger that you would like. So when new heroes come out, you can go back and play those missions with different characters.
Okay, because that's what I was thinking about. So it's not always the game telling you who to play with.
No,
Right.
No, and you've only seen a small subset of the game today. We have a lot more stuff to show later.
But that's also interesting because they're very different. And I mean, how do you plan a mission in a way that it makes sense to play as Black Widow or Hulk? The challenges are different for them.
Yes, it's a mix of the environment and the enemies, creating scenarios where at different moments, different heroes are at an advantage. And I think depending on, it could be up to you. You could decide that an Avenger is really well suited for a specific mission, and that's okay. So that can become your choice. Or you could just handle the mission in a way where you're really leveraging your hero's specific abilities. So the game is pretty versatile that way.
Okay.
I don't know that I have much to add. So we have the core campaign, right, where you go through, and there are certain levels where you want to play a certain character to get the background and get the narrative, of that character, their perspective on that piece of the story.
So
but then it can branch off.
Parts of the story if you choose a different character, maybe?
So I'm talking about certain levels you want to play a specific character for, because that's part of the narrative. But then there's other, points where you branch off and you can go play missions as different characters.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it comes back to the main campaign if you want, or you can continue playing, lots of multiplayer levels. Yeah.
And in the trailer and a bit more also in the demo, you show that there are other characters. You show Hank Pym at the conference, and here, there's Taskmaster. So I guess it's going to be much wider than in the movies, which is what a lot of people are familiar with.
Right. We're certainly setting it up so that the game can grow a lot over the next few years.
Yeah, we're really lucky in that we have over 80 years of Marvel DNA to pull from, right? There's been many, many characters that have been Avengers over the years.
And on every character you put your different spin. How do you work in making your version of these characters?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a mix of us wanting to tell a very unique story, and then working with Marvel to make sure that the DNA really comes through. So I'm sure you've seen our conference, you've seen how passionately Bill talks about the Marvel IP. And they're really fun to work with. We'll say, hey, we're thinking of doing this thing with a character, and they'll come back to us and send us some references about maybe comic books, or it could be something from 50 years ago, and that's really, really cool. So the reason why a lot of things look familiar when you look at them is because we're injecting some of that DNA. So you might not even know right away why it feels familiar to you, but if you're a really hardcore Marvel fan, you'll be able to see really small details. So I would really encourage anybody that's a Marvel fan to really look at our videos in the game and look for those small details. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there.
How much freedom do you have in, toying with the characters? I don't know if you're familiar with the Telltale Batman game. They changed a lot of stuff from the comic books, which is surprising, but
right.
is also what?
Yeah. No, I understand. What matters to us is that people feel like the heroes are familiar. So you should recognize that Thor is being Thor, but certainly what happens to him is our own story. Like that's our own doing. We don't want these things to feel so different, and people are like, well, that's absolutely not what my expectation of those heroes are. And Bill has mentioned this even himself. Like that's something that we're collaborating with Marvel on to make sure that the heroes stay true to who they are.
And you said there will be customization in the multiplayer, or also for the character you use in the single player?
That's right.
Yeah, we're going to have a selection of outfits. You can also customize your skills and gear. So like the Hulk that I, create and level up in game may be different than the Hulk that Phil, creates.
So you get different skills, different set of powers?
Yeah, different costume. You can get, different gear.
That's right.
And the control system, you put, like, those are specific action, you put them there?
We're not quite talking about that part of the gameplay yet.
Yeah, but if you look at the videos, you can kind of piece together a little bit of it. So we'll give more details about the heroes' abilities and powers in the near future.
And it's cool. I mean, they kind of do what you expected when you want them to do. So
yeah.
From what I can see, you nailed that part.
And it was very important to us that when you play these heroes, you feel super heroic. We're like, oh yeah, that's how Black Widow should feel when you play her. That's how Hulk should feel, smashing through everything.
Yeah, and keep in mind that you're only seeing a small subset. This isn't even all the moves that the characters have, so we're just showing a small sample in that level.
Okay. I'm sure you get this question a lot, but where's Hawkeye?
Well, were you at the conference yesterday?
Were you the one?
I wasn't, but I read about it.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has a favorite hero that they hope is going to make it in the game. So we encourage people to speak out. Maybe not always at our conferences to get crazy. But yeah, we're going to be listening to what people are saying. It would be hard to get everybody's favorite hero in there, but we certainly have plans to add a lot of them. So,
what's your favorite hero?
I don't know. It's a hard question.
It's hard for us too because we love them all, right?
Yeah. I have to admit that I wasn't as much in the Avengers as a kid. I've become more lately, I guess because of the movies. I was more into
it. It helps.
When I was a teenager, I guess. But I used to love Iron Man, so maybe that's
there you
the answer.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
I think I asked you everything. Oh yeah, well, it's not specifically related to Avengers, but it's a question I ask to everybody. So if you can tell me what is the last great game you played, and why do you think it's great?
Oh wow.
That's a good question. The last game I had a lot of fun playing, I think, was the Division 2. Had a lot of fun with that. Yeah.
Okay. And why do you love it?
It's a really cool world. It's just really fun for me to play, especially the co-op.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to confess, the last game that I played and just thought was fantastic was Spider-Man. I just love swinging around the city as Spider-Man and beating up the bad guys. It's awesome.
Makes sense. He's a friend, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, can you introduce yourself too?
Sure. My name is Leonard Boyarsky. I'm the co-game director on the Outer Worlds for Obsidian Entertainment.
Okay. I was watching the presentation and it was on this planet, and I was wondering how does it work? You can go on whatever planet you want to, or is there like a story guiding you through the planets?
Both. So the story starts, you're a colonist who's been in suspended animation for 70 years. The colony ship you're on with hundreds of thousands of other colonists was knocked off course. It finally got to the colony like 60, 70 years late. The government, the corporate board decided they weren't going to revive the people because they didn't know how, number one, because when you're revived after being in hibernation for too long, there's this very painful death. And they hadn't figured that out, and they decided they weren't even going to try. So the scientist rescues you, who thinks it's wrong for them to just leave those people out there. And he tries to recruit you to help him. So the first thing you have to do is get yourself a ship. Mm-hmm. Once you get yourself a ship, which is in the area, which is in and of itself it's a little bit of a linear area, but there's a lot of different ways to approach it, as with everything in our game. Once you get your ship, you can go anywhere in this colony except for 3 places, which has to do with story and logical reasons. It doesn't feel arbitrarily gated. For instance, you can't get to Monarch because it's been blockaded. There is a landing pad you can get to on Monarch, but I don't know if you recall in New Vegas, you could go straight from Good Springs to the Strip, which is definitely not recommended because it goes right through where all the death claws are. So we have kind of the same thing. You can land on this obscure landing pad on Monarch, but then it's just almost instant death. So if you want to try that, you can. But to get to the city, the town that's actually civilized, there you have to do some stuff. There's a couple of other places, but other than those specific places, once you get your ship, you can go to anywhere else in the colony. There's 2 main planets, Terra 2 and Monarch. Those are the big Earth-like planets. Monarch is only half Earth-like because you can, as you saw in the demo, it's very alien. But it's more terraformed than there's an asteroid you can go to. There's a couple space stations, things like that. And your story will take you through those in a specific order if you follow it. But then if you decide to go work with the board or even go back and forth between the board, Phineas, there's a lot of non-linearity there.
So you can do the Fallout thing that if you know where to go, you can go straight to the end of the game.
Not quite.
Okay.
But close. I mean, there's definitely a lot of ways to play this out of order.
Okay.
But we support that, and we remembered to hopefully remember to close those loopholes. Unlike in the original Fallout, we forgot to check something.
Okay.
Like whether you actually got the water chip.
And
just a little thing.
And more specifically, the planets, are they kind of open worldish or more?
Yeah, they're not huge maps. The biggest map is Monarch. When you're the overlands, as you saw when you're running.
That looked like a big place
that's our biggest contiguous map. We have a lot of. They're not small. They're decent sized maps, but they're self-contained, and there's a lot of gameplay and exploration in those. But the very theme of the game, or the very idea of the game, is that you're a space hero or space villain who has a ship and is traveling all around this system. So it really didn't make sense to have a huge open world map, because that kind of defeats the purpose of getting in my ship and traveling to a whole bunch of different places.
Yeah. Plus, I guess it makes sense to not make it too big if you want to give the density of options and stuff to do with all the different paths.
Yeah, there's that, and there's also, we're a little bit of a smaller game than some of those other giant open world games. We had, we set out to make a game that was a little bit more contained due to not only budget and time reasons, but also just because we felt it would work better for the game as a whole.
Okay. Almost everything. I mean, for the demo you showed, it really looked like I used to play in the original Fallout, where I can double cross everybody and do whatever I want. So the whole point is to make everything like that, complete freedom of choice. And
yes, exactly. That's at the heart of the RPGs we like to make, is that where you can do anything you want.
Okay, because that's not something I kind of always expect with this kind of production. With voiceovers and stuff, I kind of expect it's going to be a bit more linear.
Well, that's one of the reasons that's not the only reason, but that is a very significant reason or part of the reason we decided to not have a player voice. Because that really limits you in a number of ways. It limits how many lines you can record for that. It also kind of locks you into a very specific kind of feel for the player character, and we really were committed to letting the players choose who they are as a character and really play that character.
Okay. And can you talk a bit about how the companion work, how you interact with them? Can they do stuff that if they don't like what you do, can they intervene, that kind of things?
They won't ever intervene to stop you, but if you do something that they specifically don't like, they will tell you about it, and there's specific things you can do that would drive them away. If you've put points into leadership, though, you can convince them to stay, convince them that no, it was a good thing that I killed your best friend, or whatever you did, because you've put all those points into being a leader and charisma, and convincing them that you're right, and they were kind of seeing the world not quite correctly. But yeah, the companions we really wanted. Our goal with companions was to really make it more integral to the story, integral to the world. For instance, Nyoka is from Monarch, the woman with the big giant submachine gun that you saw in the demo. So when you go talk to people on Monarch, they're like, "Oh, hey, Nyoka, what's going on?" In the middle of this conversation you're having, or she'll say, "Don't trust this guy," because he's this person, and they'll be like, "Oh, you butt out, Nyoka," that kind of thing. So there's that interaction. And then you can ask them a lot about what they think about what's going on with the main story and all that.
And there are, I think I saw in the quest log, there are missions specifics to them, or?
Yes, they have their own quest lines.
And doing those also helps you keep them in check if they...
No, that's more of a character story thing.
Okay.
They have certain things that they want to accomplish, and you could either help them or not.
Okay. Can you talk about the flaws?
That was an idea that Tim came up with originally. He really wanted to bring back that idea of the flawed hero. Way back in the early days, you had traits, for instance, where it was like you get an advantage and a disadvantage. And those were completely optional. We kind of wanted the same thing here, where it's based around the idea of the flawed hero. Being more interesting to roleplay than just someone who ends up completely superhuman by the end of the game, which is basically the genesis of that idea.
Okay, and they're optional.
Yes.
How does the system work? It looks at everything you do, and then it decides, okay, you should have this.
Yeah, if you take a lot of damage from robots, for instance, it'll ask you if you want robophobia. If you catch on fire a lot, it'll ask you if you want to, take extra damage when you're on fire.
So I'm going to feel judged by the game.
Well, no, it's it's completely optional. It's for people who really want that extra experience, the extra challenge, the extra way of defining their character, the role playing of their character, and the extra perks you get by choosing them. You get an extra perk every time you choose one of those.
So there's that. It balances out accepting that. Okay, yeah, makes sense.
So if we can taunt you with you really, really want this perk now, don't you?
Are you going to be pushy on that?
No,
when they say that, when they say, oh, then you should try this.
You should record me and Tim saying that. You really want this, don't you?
Okay. How important are the side quests? Do they interact, I guess, with the main storyline? Are they more segregated?
There's a wide variety of them. I'm trying to think. The main story arc can react to some of the side quests you do, and some of them are just purely side quests. It's a case by case basis kind of thing.
Okay, so it's a mix. I'm seeing that, especially at this E3, there are quite a few games that are not exactly the same genre, but I don't know, I feel they occupy the same space. First person RPG, there's Cyberpunk, there's Bloodlines, and I don't know, I would argue that even the games that Arcane Studios make, they have some of the philosophy. How do you relate to this? I mean, are they just competitors? I don't want to see them.
No, I'm really interested. I mean, I love RPGs. I'm really excited that there's a lot of people making this kind of game now. It seemed like there hadn't been for a long time, and now there is, and it's just, I love this kind of game, and I can't wait to play those other ones and see how they've approached the problem of giving the player that kind of freedom and choice making.
Plus, I used to think that it was kind of a niche market, but now it looks like
that's
all the rage.
That's fantastic. I'm very happy about that.
I guess that's good for you.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you can talk about this, but did the acquisition by Microsoft change anything regarding this specific game?
No, not at all. We've been working with Private Division since the beginning, and that's going to continue.
Okay, so it's a completely separate.
Yeah, they're publishing. We are part of Microsoft now, but their stated goal was that our company and the other companies they've bought recently maintain our own identities and keep doing what we've been doing.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, if I look at all the acquisition they made, it looks like they're actively looking for studios that are kind of proud of their independency. Yeah. So I guess they would promise you can go on and do what they want.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in those discussions. I was busy making this game. So
of course,
but that's what we've been told is that was the goal, is to keep us being Obsidian.
Okay. Well, there's been a lot of talk recently about the fact that developers don't like to admit in interviews that their games are politically engaged. It doesn't look you don't want to admit. I mean, all the satire that you have in this game, it's quite, we want to talk about those things. Am I right?
Yes, but it was, we started this in April of 2016, so certain things have happened between then and now that have kind of cast some of this in a different light. And we never set out to make a preachy game or a game that we're really, this is a message. It's really more about, and this is, you could Fallout, Arcanum, we always keep returning to these themes, even Vampire, of authority and who's got the power, just because this time, that's why it was very weirdly timely that, we chose to talk about corporations at this point in history. But, in Arcanum, it was, we kind of got into a little bit of like, well, what if we explored the seemingly inherent racism in fantasy worlds that no one really ever talks about, and whatever would happen if technology came to a world of magic. So that was interesting to us then. So we like to delve into that. We don't want to make games where they're, people have religions, people have political views. We don't feel like our game worlds would feel very realistic or very have the kind of depth they do if we didn't deal with things that people have always dealt with. There's always been issues even before corporations about who holds the power and who's the one in control of the story of what's going on in that civilization. And that's a very powerful thing, whoever controls those messages. And you come from outside this colony and you could see these people who have grown up in the system, even the people who are rebelling against the system are kind of like rebelling. The rebellion is almost defined by the system as well, because they're rebelling against that system. And so you come into this absurd situation and can see it for what it is. Which we could get all philosophical and talk about how that relates to the real world. Is we're all part of this. We can't see those stories around us all the time. So it does feel very pointed about the whole corporate thing, but I'm not denying that that's part of it, but it was always a bigger thing that we were exploring than just the corporations. And a lot of the corporation stuff was meant to be kind of our humorous take on that, and how it was very blatant. It's so obvious in the outer worlds. The message that the corporations push in the outer worlds is so blatantly ridiculous. But it was, sure, we were trying to make a point about it, but it was, part of that point was, it was just funny, and it's funny to take things like that to an extreme and to show how ridiculous they can be.
Okay. And is it bizarre for you to think that there are people who think that you're doing a game that it is kind of like Fallout in terms of humor, even though, I mean, you were the guys who made Fallout in the first place?
I've often said I don't understand why it's okay for everybody else to be influenced by Fallout, but when we do it, it's just like, were you going to make another Fallout? It's just like, why can't we continue what we started years ago? And it's just, we can't, it's going to, no matter what we do, especially when we're in a science fiction kind of genre, it's going to feel like that, because it's really based around mine and Tim's personalities and how we view the world. We have, if somebody else set out to make a game that was like Fallout, they would have to be like constantly asking, like, how is this like Fallout? How can I make this more like Fallout? We had the exact opposite problem. It's like, because when we did Fallout, it was just us in a room being like, what do we want to make? There's no restrictions. We can do whatever we want. Apart from budget and time. And that's what we came up with. And so again, it's just following our guts and what we like to see. The question we always continually had to ask ourselves is like, is this too much like Fallout? Only because it's what we would do when we're given free reign. And it has that feeling, and we can't help having that feeling, because that's where Fallout originally came from.
And is it, now there's Bloodlines too, and well, there's been quite a lot of Fallouts. Are you used to see other people doing sequels to your game by now?
It's getting, it's weird. I see people running around with shirts with the Vault Boy on them, and I was the one who came up with the original idea and the sketch for him. That's very bizarre. I never ever thought that, we hoped that Fallout would be a popular game and that people would love it, but I never in a million years thought that it would become this huge thing that it is. And And I never really thought that there'd ever be another. I never thought there'd be another Fallout after Fallout 2. I never thought there'd be another Bloodlines. And now we're seeing that it is kind of. It is weird, but it's kind of cool at the same time. Now I get to go play Bloodlines. I get to go play a Fallout that I have no idea what's going to happen. I get to go play a Bloodlines that I have no idea what's going to happen.
Well, that must be fun.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
Okay, well then I'm going to close with a question I give to everybody.
Sure.
If you can tell me what's the last great game you played, and why do you think it's great?
I've been looking at The Return of Obra Dinn. I really think that is just so inventive, and I love a lot of the independent, what people are doing in independent spaces these days. Stuff you've never really even seen before. I mean, that's something that no one's ever done. I just think that's really fascinating, and I think it was a great approach to storytelling.
And so it's nice when sometimes indie games have this great idea and they're completely based on it, but then you see that idea in AAA games as part of them. There's some, I don't know, cross-pollination. Yeah.
I think it is great, and I think that those. When you're making smaller games, you have the ability to kind of experiment like that, and that's wonderful. And I don't think, hopefully that'll make bigger games better when they see that those things that people have done. I think cross-pollination and just evolving the medium is just a great thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, can you introduce yourselves?
Yes, hello, my name is Brooke. I'm a narrative designer on Control.
And hi, my name is Mikale Kasurinen, and I'm the game director of Control.
Okay, cool. Well, how long have you been in Remedy? Have you been working on previous games? Have you been there from the beginning?
I started in October last year, so I've been at Remedy for approximately 9 months.
Okay.
Before that, I was working on indie titles like The Gardens Between, which just picked up an Apple Design Award. I worked on Paperbark, and I worked on Florence.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm an old person.
You are a seasoned veteran. That's the way to say
that sounds way better. So I've been at Remedy since 2001.
Okay.
So I worked on Max Payne 2 as a gameplay designer, then went on to lead the design on Alan Wake, and then I did a little stint at Sweden, worked on the Mad Max game, and then at DICE on Battlefield 4, then came back to Remedy to work on Quantum Break as a game director, and now continue to Control to be a game director there as well.
Okay. And from what I understand, I was at it was a reboot in the Dubrovnik, and there was a speech from guys from Remedy talking about how you changed a lot the way you approach development with shorter development cycles. And since you're a veteran, and actually this looks like you're being much quicker in making Control than
it's true. Yeah. That's actually a great question. When you look back, we spent quite a bit of time coming up with Max Payne 1. Like if you go all the way back, and then the philosophy of making games, people said like when it's done, and so on. It's not that easy nowadays anymore, but it was a different type of environment then. So we took our time, and with Alan Wake, I think it was 6 years almost in total, and then with Quantum Break 5 years, and now with Control 3 years. So we are making progress, right? Like we're kind of doing a better job, I think, in managing ourselves and kind of getting results quicker. And what I'm personally proud about with Control was that it's a new IP. And we've done new IPs quite a few times, of course, but it's never easy. There's always this kind of a hurdle they need to go through in establishing the world and characters and so on.
There's a lot of groundwork to do, really, isn't there? And especially with Control, with its rich world. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's a new type of direction for us as well. Like when you look at Quantum Break, it's like still a linear story game, but here we have a non-linear game structure. It has a main campaign, it has side missions, exploration. Huge part of the kind of content is actually optional for the player. There are entire bosses that are on side missions, for instance, and so on. So it's a very different kind of structure that we have for the game. Thank you so much. And So when you take that, and also the idea that we actually rebuilt a lot of the tech as well. There's a new animation system, there's a new physics system, there's a new AI system.
But the base engine is the same you use for Quantum Break, I guess?
Yes, it is the same base engine, but we updated a lot of that engine. And we got it all done in 3 years, so I think that's a pretty good
Pretty solid effort, yeah.
And the fact that it's the first non-linear game for Remedy, well, I guess has been hard to adapt to this different kind of game for you, but also for you as a writer.
Right.
Is it hard to write such a... Well, I mean, you don't know exactly always what the player is going to do.
Correct, yeah. We don't always know which side missions the player might have completed, for example. So that definitely had an impact on the way that we wrote the dialogue, the way that we wrote the optional content. You can find a lot of like documents and videos and audio logs around the world as well. And so, you know, thinking about what the player would have seen already, and what little hints and things we can drop around that same time that they're experiencing, you know, a new phenomena in the game, because we have a lot of cool, weird things that require explanation, but also not explain too much. So yeah, that was a challenge, but it was also exciting because it meant that there were more ways to tell the story, not just a linear sort of main mission story experience, but also you can do side missions for characters and learn more about them. You can also, we have story moments where you can talk to the characters and ask them more about the world, which is a new thing for Remedy as well. So it's been a joy. Like, it's been a great joy because there's been more for us to sink our teeth into. And as a narrative designer, I'm always thinking about story from a player perspective. So how is the player receiving the story? Does it make sense at the time that they're receiving the story? How do working with level designers, environment artists, lighting, VFX, to make sure all of this audio is working together. And that's even more important in this game, I would potentially argue, because we're telling story in many different ways, but also at many different times. We don't know exactly when that can be experienced. So all of it is in harmony.
I would add to that we've also taken a direction with many elements where we have a sense of restraint on how much we expose certain elements to the player. It's up to the player to pay attention, find their way through this world, explore, find all the kind of different lore that we've hidden in the environments and so on. And we don't have quest markers, for instance. You need to actually look at the signs on the walls and kind of find your way through that. You need to look at the world. That's how we wanted it to be.
I was a bit disoriented because I'm so used to having like this yellow arrow pointing.
Exactly, yeah. Something's always telling you where to go. But what that does to the experience, it kind of makes it more shallow.
Gives you some tunnel vision sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah. You don't look around. You don't look around anymore. You don't like even necessarily run past some interesting side rooms and things like that, because you have no reason to stop and look around, because there's this thing in the screen telling you go over here, and that's not what we want. We want the player to go through this world and live in this world and find their own way through it. And
that's kind of what happens in reality when you use your phone.
When you
that's right, yeah.
Use a map.
Go around.
Yeah, like the GPS phenomena when you're driving a car and then you just blindly follow the GPS navigator, even though it might be wrong. And yeah, it's and so we wanted the player to look at the world, and it meant that we had to think about the way we tell stories a bit differently, and avoid spoon feeding the concepts to the player, and trust that they will find their way and understand what's happening, at least to a degree.
Okay. And how does it work when you're like, I don't know, the level designer says to you, we have a blank space here, you should write something to do there, or is it the opposite? I have this idea, you create a place where to put it?
Oh, it's very reciprocal. So it can be, we have something that we would like to convey in a particular area to the player, and then we work with the level designers to find out, when the appropriate place can be. Like, for example, if we have an area where there's an important audio log, we ask for no combat to be in that space, so that the player can find that. And also, something you don't think about is that because there's such a reactive environment, we need to make sure that the player can't pick up the table and throw the document across the room and never find it again. So, it's just small things like that, but also talking to environment artists about those signs and what to write on the signs, for example, how to keep all of that language in the oldest house consistent. So it feels like a living, breathing place that people have been working in for some time. And also same with audio, like I've been working really closely with our sound designers to find like the right sounds for the environment, but also so the player knows what to do, but also so that, we keep the strange mystery. And it's actually great because I say I have a narrative problem, and actually everyone else brings their creativity to it and solves it in a way that's probably better than what I could come up with, by myself. So it's awesome. Like it's really cool. Yeah, I enjoy it.
And you mentioned picking up tables and stuff.
Yes, you can throw everything.
And in the game, when there's nothing to pick up, you grab a piece of the wall.
Yes.
You always have something.
You always
grab,
get something.
Even if there's nothing.
Right.
Did you ever consider not doing that, creating a situation when if you throw everything, then you only have your gun, I guess?
No, it was to me important right away that we give you this interesting telekinetic ability that becomes part of how you survive in this game. And we discussed the other way around, because it's possible that you pick all the different props that you can find and throw them away. And then what gets left behind is like, if it's just an empty room, that's not that fun, is it? So we started to create a system that allows the player then just basically rip pieces out from the wall itself. So there's always something for you to get that you can actually use as a weapon. And because it would be game design wise way harder to kind of deal with the other way around, because some of the enemies, they are protected by a supernatural energy that you can only destroy with heavy physical force, like using launch, like throwing an object, or using melee and so on. So the game's been built with that intent, and that's why it was important. We're always able to provide you something you can use as a weapon.
Ok, faccio un'ultima domanda. Ok.
I'm the bad guy.
You're the bad guy.
Okay, last question. Okay, this is the last question I give to everybody. So if you guys can tell me what is the last great game you played and why is it great?
Oh my goodness. I actually just finished all of Spider-Man and all of the Spider-Man DLC. I really loved the amount of detail in that game when it comes to not only the environment but the story, and the different voice recordings, for example, for whether you're swinging while talking or stationary while talking. It was just a pleasure to be in that game, and I really think they captured the feel of being Spider-Man, and yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, enjoyed that.
To me, I started playing it a bit late, Red Dead Redemption 2, and it was something that I didn't expect in many ways. It embraces this idea of realism that I've never seen in any other game in the same way before. The slowness, the heaviness, the reality of life being there, and the degree that you need to participate in that experience was something that was crazy almost, that you have to clean up your gun, or if you want to pick stuff up, you go individually, pick everything up, and everything is animated, everything is done properly, and so on. And they do storytelling also in a way that I don't think people realize how complicated it is what they're doing. Just walking around in the camp, I'm not sure if you play the game, but when you walk in a camp that you have, like with your gang, how people come up to you and might want to talk with you about something, and how fluid that is, how like the multitude of permutations that they've kind of covered with that system is just mind-boggling. It's a massive achievement that they managed to put that game together. So yeah, that blew me away.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm Jason. Pleasure to meet you. It's early in the morning and it's your third day, so I get it.
I'm sure you're tired too.
I don't usually get tired until the day after. You just power through it and then
Yeah, I have the added bonus of jet lag when I go back.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess my first question, it's what I always think about with VR is how you go mainstream with that, because it's bizarre, because in a way it's the more mainstream thing you can get. Everybody can try it and think, wow, this is amazing, but then you have to put this thing on, you need a controller, it's expensive, you need the hardware, so I don't know, how do you fight this struggle?
Yeah, we had a Quest yesterday. It's all right, we don't need it. So let's tackle all those things. You do need a piece of hardware. You do need controllers. We believe that's the right thing for consumers. But at $399 for all of that, it's in the price of a console. And as the content continues to grow and expand, it seems reasonable that if it was good enough for a console on a TV, it's good enough for another type of console with a different output that happens to sit on your head. It also gives you a functionality that nothing else in the world can give you. So I think being inside an alternate world and being entertained by that is a strong enough call to people that they'll want to get in. Where I think we are right now is that a lot of people don't realize that all of that is true. The last few years, VR has gone through a rough birth, and then lots of instantiations of various types of device, from 3 degree of freedom devices that were highly inexpensive, in fact sometimes free if you think of cardboard, but didn't perform very well in terms of what it gave the consumer, all the way to super expensive PCs attached to really expensive headsets that gave incredible experiences but were hard to set up and out of reach for most consumers. And it takes a while for the press and the feeling that that's all that's out there to change. But I think Quest changes that radically. Quest is a single device that can be bought in a retail store or online in Amazon. And you take it out of the box, and as long as you have a wall jack and a mobile phone, which basically anyone that will buy the device will have, you have everything you need to get started.
It's not a peripheral anymore, it's a platform.
No, exactly, it's a platform. It's a standalone platform. We sell a carrying case in the US for a few dollars. That at that point, it's also a platform that can work anywhere. And it's really easy to put on. It's like a ball cap, it's really that fast. Setting up boundary systems and going takes a matter of less than a minute. I do it all the time. If we walked into another room, we could set it up in less than a minute. And in fact, we could walk between those rooms without ever taking it off. So the functionality and simplicity is there. The price, we can always get better. Content, we will always push to get better. Hardware will always get better. But we're now at a point where I think it is ready to go mass market.
Okay, well, that's a strong opinion, I guess.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the fact that some more accessible platforms that don't perform very well. Do you think that's an issue, that people try, cardboard or maybe even PlayStation VR, which is really good, but it's not as good as other platforms, and they don't realize how good VR can be? They kind of reject it because it's not as good as they expected it. Do you think that can happen?
I think it does happen. I think in the long run it'll be fine. Some of the first PDAs that came out, personal, display, Newton, before that even Microsoft had one, even early Blackberries and other devices that had some internet connectivity and were smart in some ways, not as smart as iPhones. Some people liked them, some people tried them. My business partner at the time, Andy Gavin, tried it, kind of liked it, didn't end up using it. You could say, did the Newton push back the launch of iPhone? Maybe. Consumers will come back as soon as they know the functionality is there. And with every user, every user has friends that they can tell, hey, it's ready now, and try it. The functionality of being able to move it around makes it really easy to take to your friends and put it on their heads. And what we're finding is you're getting these clusters of people because they do want to do it. They do like what they're seeing. So I think it's fine.
Okay.
Is it optimal? No, but it's also kind of normal for technology to come out early, not quite perform as it's supposed to, and then eventually, technology and software catch up with expectations, and then you have a parabolic expand.
Okay. I remember seeing a talk from Tim Sweeney from Epic, and I think Mark Zuckerberg said a similar thing, that he thought that in 10 to 20 years we're going to get to this as a form factor, a pair of glasses, and that's what we need for completely amazing. Do you believe that in, I don't know, 10 years we can get to there?
I don't know. It's, these things are really hard to judge. There's a saying that we overestimate how quickly technology comes and then underestimate how quickly it becomes pervasive, right? So in other words, we overestimate how quickly we'll get to glasses, but when we do get to glasses, we underestimate how many people will jump in and how quickly they will. 10 years seems aggressive for VR and glasses like that, or AR and glasses like that. There's heat dissipation issues, batteries, other things like that. Could happen, could totally happen. We'll see. What I'm focused on is right now a good time for consumers to jump into VR? And I believe the headset we have, which I know is not going to glasses next year, is the right platform and the right content for people to jump in now at the right price.
I have to admit, I didn't expect to have something like Oculus Quest this early. So
that's right. We overestimate kind of some parts of it and we underestimate other parts of it. I personally thought we'd be a little farther in like how far we had expanded the types of content that you could have. In other words, we have a Beat Saber. Why don't we have 20 Beat Sabers, right? So perhaps that will happen this year or next year, that people will start going crazy. I think as a development platform, Quest is also transformative, because I think developers will look at it and say, now I know my target. Like, I know exactly what the future is going to look like. It may be thinner, lighter, higher res screens, blah, blah, blah. But roughly speaking, it's going to be my hands and this headset, and now I can develop for that. The Beat Saber developers have said it's almost like they built Beat Saber for Quest. That was they love the cord free, they love the simplicity. It has a new mode, 360, because of Quest. It's pushing them to do better with even a product they already have that's wildly successful. So I think developers will now start accelerating what they can do now that they have the device, right? That perfect device.
And on that topic, one thing that it looks like we're still missing a bit, I mean, we have a lot of indie stuff, but maybe not many AAA kind of game, which I'm not sure we necessarily need, because when you're in VR, even if you don't have that top graphics, it's still amazing. But at the same time, I don't know, the idea of a VR Uncharted is fascinating.
Right.
So why do you think we still don't have that? Will we get there?
Yeah, it's a bunch of reasons. One is a lot of the developers we're talking to now that are AAA developers that are going on to their next project, and we're talking to them about working in VR, started the project that they're showing at E3 and shipping this year before VR existed. It takes a long time to make some of these big titles, I'm sure if you ask Project Red when Cyberpunk was started, it was before we launched Rift. So had they even thought of doing it as VR, they would have had to think that without any hardware to develop on. So that's one reason. The other reason is, the cost of development is quite high on those titles. The number of users in VR is not yet big enough to necessarily pay that off. I think, over the next few years, now that we have the target hardware, that the number of users will increase, and more these transitioning AAA teams and big publishers will say, we're not going all in on VR, but let's see what our bigger IP would look like in VR. Let's put a foot in that market while we keep the other foot in the market we're in already. So it'll happen.
Okay. And you mentioned AR, and I've been talking with some developers, especially Tetsuya Mitsuguchi. He's very fixated on the idea of mixed reality and having VR, but also taking down the barrier and having other people with us. How do you feel about that?
AR and gaming, effectively, right?
Yeah, and the idea of he was talking about the idea of mixing VR with AR to have the opportunity to interact more directly with people while you're playing VR. I'm not sure what he was talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can take that. We could have VR that has pass-through cameras to the outside, which feels like AR, but it has, at this point, technologically, advantages because most AR glasses can't go completely black, so everything looks ghosty. The opportunity, if you had everything on a screen, is that you don't have that ghost effect. The downside is it looks like you're looking at a screen. It doesn't look, you're not seeing actual light pass through, so you can see the differences. Your eyes can tell. Putting all that aside for a second, VR and AR are going to expand as use cases for a long time. We think VR is a computing platform, not a game platform, ultimately. Right now, the most likely consumer to jump into VR is a gamer, followed by media watchers and other entertainment use cases. But in the long run, architects, medicine, sitting at your desktop with 50 screens and like super, capabilities to yank off windows, work on the one under, push it. All of that is really interesting. So we will definitely see gaming in AR. I'm not sure AR's first use case is gaming. I think it's more informational and kind of application based. I wouldn't necessarily immediately try to play a tabletop game or a Pokemon Go. I might, but I'd be more interested in like where's the nearest restaurant that's good. Is it your birthday tomorrow? Happy birthday, because it would tell me that. Things like that seem to be the use case for AR. We'll see.
Okay. You work a lot with developers and you invest. How exactly does it work? Because you don't develop games internally, at least not a lot.
Not a lot, correct. We have a few things we develop internally. One of them is Dead and Buried, which is a game we use often as a R&D platform more than a releasable game. We test early SDKs and work that we're doing internally with that team. We also have a social VR team that's built various things, spaces, venues, things like that. We have a team that's building apps like Oculus TV. But when it comes to the mass amount of content, there's kind of two ways that works. One is our studios group, which you can think of as the equivalent of a second-party organization like Sony, where we fully fund a developer to make a title that we both agree should exist, and then we work with them with a full-time producer to bring it out. So Lone Echo 2, Stormland, Vader Immortal for that matter. Those are titles that we kind of second-party developed. And then we have third-party titles. Third-party titles are created by developers or publishers with their own money. Sometimes we give them grants and help out to add functionality or to just make the product better. Sometimes we don't. We do give them technical support if they need it, if they want it. Though every now and then a title gets submitted to our store, especially the Rift store, that we're unaware would have existed until they've given us the final code, and we're pleasantly surprised it exists and put it into the store if it's high quality. On Quest, we're trying to move to a tell us early so that we can tell you whether or not that product really fits our audience and kind of is going to live up to the standards we want, so that we don't surprise you at the end if we say this isn't the quality we want for Quest. But we still have third-party developers approaching us and saying, here's what we want to build. And we say, great, now that we know that you're building it, we're going to move you into the store. That's our goal. It's not our goal is not to hear about it and then later make a decision. Our decision here is we want this in the store. We're going to do everything we can, including financial help, coding help, everything, to get that in the store. And unless you completely fail to bring the product to fruition, or if you change it radically to a point where it's not what we were building, it'll get in the store. So Beat Saber is an example of a third-party title. After the Fall is an example of a third-party title. We have a bunch of those. They run the gamut. Some of them, is it third party, is it second party? It's hard to tell. But generally speaking, we're out there trying to help developers bring their products to market. That's the goal.
And even with second party, the IP belongs to the developer?
Yep.
Okay.
So far, 100%. We own Dead and Buried's IP because it was built internally. There's no one else to give it to. But for example, Ready at Dawn owns Lone Echo. Stormland is owned by Insomniac. Vader, clearly not owned by us. But yeah, we are not, generally speaking, out for the IP. I don't want to say it would never happen, because who knows what the business needs we might have in a year or two might be. But to date, we've been helping the developers build IP with the hope that once they have a resonating IP in VR, they just keep building it because it's profitable, which is good for VR, right? And in fact, many of these IP we've paid for, and then they've gone off and they've built it for other platforms, or sometimes they've gone to 2D with it. Lucky Tale is a good example of that.
And all these different platforms, Oculus, Vive, PlayStation VR, they're different. They have different targets, so you don't see them exactly as competitors. You're all like working towards the same objective, or is there like, I don't know, a friendly war? how could I put it?
Yeah, well, a business is a business, so you're always trying to make your business succeed, and in that sense, you do what you can to make it succeed. Having said that, VR is very early, so the better we all do, the better we all do. And for example, Sony and Oculus have quite a close relationship, and in fact, I don't know if it happened this show, but almost every show, when we show new software, I get a message. I used to work for Sony, Naughty Dog to Sony, so I get a message from my old friends, and they're like, "Can we come see?" And there's no line for them. We pull them right in. At GDC, one of the executives was there for about an hour playing every single title we're making, and they're not out on the shelf, but we have a friendly relationship. We chuckle and laugh. I mean, it's kind of like the NBA, right? When you're on the court, it's a sport. When they're off the court, they're drinking together and they're friends because they're in the same battle together, which is, competition. There's that friendship. So I'd say that's where the industry is right now.
Okay. I think we covered basically everything I wanted to ask. Is it okay if I ask you a couple of questions that are not specifically VR related?
Sure.
I was doing research and I stumbled on you doing a speech many years ago about the industry, not the way industry treats game developers.
Yeah.
And now those things are maybe different.
Very different.
There's been a lot of talk, other issues like, I don't know, crunch times and game developers need to unionize, and and since you were so vocal back then, I wonder if you have any thoughts on how things are going now.
Yeah, that's probably a better question for the various developers that we have working for us. From Facebook's standpoint, we want a healthy work environment for everybody. And we want the best possible products, both of those things at the same time. None of them are more important than the others. So long as there are healthy environments out there, we're happy. Every developer has a different situation, so it's probably better for you to talk to the developers, but we really do want happy developers, happy consumers, happy ecosystem, best quality content. All of those things have to be true for us.
I'm sure you had quite a lot of crunch times back in the Crash Bandicoot days, and do you miss that in any way? Not specifically the crunch, but being more on the game development side.
Yeah, I do. I do miss being on the game development side. There's a certain, for me personally, there's a certain peace that comes from me and a computer and things being achieved. And when I was a developer, when those things come out and tens of millions of people play them, and there's billboards all over, and TV advertising, and everybody loves it, and people are tattooing it on their bodies, and you built it, that joy is hard to replicate unless it's an artist's joy, right? And that was my art happiness. So yeah, I do miss that. Crunch?
No, of course not.
Not so much, and everybody's different, and again, it's really important that everybody has a comfortable work environment. That's really like primary, and for different people that's a different thing, and we just have to be as good as we can about treating each other well.
Okay. Is it bizarre to see Crash Bandicoot come out today, even on Switch?
We were having this conversation. I mean, I just tweeted a picture of myself sitting in the CTR cart that's out in the front, and it's been 20 years, and it's shocking how that's almost a better booth than we had when it launched, right? And people are still really excited about it.
Yeah, it's still the bestseller.
I get, every now and then someone sends me a picture of it. Actually, they're for some reason almost always on the calf, a tattoo of Crash Bandicoot, and I built the character. It changed my life. I have no tattoos, so it is weird. It's weird and awesome at the same time. I'm proud of what the team achieved. I'm extremely proud of what Naughty Dog's achieved since I left. It's been an amazing company.
Okay, one last question I give to everybody.
Yeah.
If you can tell me what is the last great game you played, and why do you think it's great? any kind of game, even a horror game. It doesn't have to be VR, whatever.
You know, this might surprise you. If you just ask me, what is the last game you played? The answer to that would be a VR title, because it's my job. So I'm going to, and I'm not going to give you the answer that you expect, which is one of these titles, although I do think they're awesome. I've been playing with my daughter Lego Avengers.
Well, makes sense.
Although these games, after the fall, Lone Echo, Stormland, Asgard's Wrath is awesome, Stormland's awesome, all these titles are awesome. Watching my 6-year-old's joy at playing Lego Avengers, I want her in VR with me, because then we'd have that same experience, but it's amazing that title does everything Jak and Daxter did.
Yeah.
And still people look at it and they're like, that's just a Lego game. And if you compare that to what we did in Jak and Daxter, it's actually technically more competent in a lot of ways. It's doing more than we did with Jak and Daxter, and people are like, it's just a Lego game. I had a magic time with Asgard's Wrath. Lone Echo 1, I haven't played Lone Echo 2 through because I don't want to ruin the story. The story is like very important to me, and the developer knows what they're doing. But Lone Echo 1 was a magic moment for me. Phantom, which we're showing here, have you tried that?
No, I have an appointment later to try a few games.
It's really interesting because when the pitch came across, it was you're sitting in a kayak and it's a stealth, combat game. Kind of think of Metal Gear, but with a kayak. It was like a kayak. Well, that's either going to work or it's not going to work. Brilliant. It's brilliant. You do this a few times and it just kind of works. And I'm not a kayaker, but and then you go into the bushes and then you take out your stuff. It's just awesome. It's so cool. VR continues to amaze me. It really does. I wonder what Crash in VR would have been like had we had that capability back in that time, right?
I'm thinking about the levels when you have the big rock following you. That would be crazy in VR.
Right, and how do you run? And games are different in VR than they are in 2D, but just putting you in a world of crashes, obviously in this day and age, it would look very different. And creating that alternate universe would be really, again, it would be my happy place.
Okay, thanks.
Of course.
I think I would give a very similar answer. I've been playing with my daughter to games that I wouldn't normally play, and